Hey friend, welcome to the Halfway to Dead podcast. I'm your host, Jen Lovell. Listen, you and I have reached that age where we are done with the bullshit. We know that midlife is our chance to flip the script and experience life on our own terms. It's time to reconnect with our higher selves and reclaim our inner peace. Are you ready with an open heart and an open mind? Awesome, you're in the right place. Hop in and ride shotgun with me on this midlife spiritual journey. Hi guys, welcome back. Thanks for coming. Hey, keep an eye on my socials, you guys, because I'm starting to drop some videos and things that go along with some of our episodes. So, if you feel like it, if not, it's cool. So today I interviewed Hilary Young, who is the author of Trusting GUS, an inspiring memoir about resilience, addiction recovery, and the presence of a higher power she calls Great Universal Spirit, or GUS. So Hilary was raised by an abusive bipolar alcoholic, and she navigated a turbulent childhood. She's battled addictions and ultimately found sobriety later in life. She went through a near-death experience of liver failure at 58, which kind of motivated her to share this story and reveal the moments of grace that shaped her journey. So we go over everything, you guys. Her AA journey, we talk about both her near-death experience when she was a child and also, the journey she went through with liver failure. She struggled with suicidal thoughts through that. Just, you guys, all kinds of stuff. She's been through the things, but more importantly, she has come back out the other side and is healing. Okay, I'm not going to say she's healed because none of us are healed with a period at the end. No, she's healing like the rest of us. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed Hilary, the interview. I feel like I found a lifelong friend. Shout out Hilary. So let's get into it. Let's hear everything that Hilary has to share with us today. Hey, Hilary, thanks for being here today.
Hey, Jen, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I told everyone about your book that I read, Trusting GUS. I was thinking this morning about how many things Hilary has been through, you guys, in this book. So I was like refreshing myself on everything. And I was like, whoa, just when you think that nothing else can be thrown at someone, no, guys, it got thrown at Hilary, right? And so I want to sit here and I don't want to just sit and go over all the shitty things that have happened to you, Hilary, but I think we've got to go over a little bit of this so people know what has led you to your own spiritual awakening and where you're at today, right?
Which is kind of the point of the book, right?
Yes, exactly. Because this book is, it's basically your life story. And I remember reading it and thinking as I got done with a chapter, and I thought, well, that's got to be it. Their life can't throw anymore at this poor woman. And then, nope, I get to the next chapter. I'm like, well, son of a bitch, there's another one. There's another trial and tribulation that Hilary's got going on.
Well, what's hilarious about that is this is not my life story. This is a 300-page book about some stuff that's happened in my life.
So there's definitely more not in this book. You probably have more books in you is what I'm thinking. But let's just start with this book. And let's start where when we start in a spiritual journey, we all end up having to head back to our damn childhoods.
Yeah, exactly. Our damn childhoods is a good way to put it.
So in your book, okay, this is a quote from a book. You say, I had a U-Haul of baggage from my bizarre childhood and patterns repeat. Okay, this is how you started one of your chapters. And you were kidding when you say, things got a little bizarre in your childhood. So let's just start with your parents, your mom and your dad. Tell us a little bit about what was going on in your childhood.
So what was going on in my childhood was the 60s. That's pretty much what was going on in my childhood. So my parents were very young. My mom was 20, or my mom was 20 and my father was 23 when they got pregnant with me. Mm-hmm. Actually, my mom was 19 and had me at 20. So they were wholly unprepared to be parents and tried to not have to be parents. But apparently I'm very stubborn because their attempt to end the pregnancy failed and I'm still here. Right?
And the crazy part is you found this out because your dad spouted this stuff out.
Yeah, because he was not a particularly kind person. He was kind of, he could be really
And then your
cruel.
mom was like the whole thing was chaotic that night. I just remember from the book, a lot going on there. But basically, your mom and dad, they were going to end the pregnancy. But you said, no, sir,
I don't even know if I said no, sir, or if Gus said no, sir. For people that are
Yeah.
wondering, GUS stands for Great Universal Spirit, which is my word for God, just because God can feel sticky for people. Like,
I've heard people say Gus also, and they think of it as God, universe, spirit. Like
mhm,
it's all of those combined in one.
sure,
And
or
so yours is great universal spirit, same thing. But this is
Gallup
what we call God.
stairs,
Yeah.
grand unconditional support, just,
Divine source, whatever
yeah,
we're all calling it. That's what Gus is. That's what her book is about, you
right,
guys, trusting Gus.
right.
And so, no, for Gus for sure had a plan for you to be here. And it was not getting derailed. Yeah.
Apparently, right? And like I say in my book, my parents, or at least my father's thought was that I was supposed to be twins, and somehow the twin, probably the one with good hair, got aborted, and now I'm still here. And that's okay, because I don't have judgment on my parents for making that decision. I get it. They were young. They knew each other for 3 weeks. They were terrified. And then when I was still here, they, made it happen. My mom stepped up to the plate and raised me. And my father was bipolar with schizophrenic tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
That first episode didn't happen until I was about 4.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a lot for my parents to have to deal with. And a part of that was that they were definitely both very free spirits who were really enjoying sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and had no intention of stopping that in spite of their parental status.
No.
So it made for some crazy times, for absolute sure.
You had a sister. Later on, from a second marriage, you had a brother, but you had a sister that grew up with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she's almost 4 years younger and was chosen. I mean, she's actually 3 years and 9 months younger, because when I turned 3, they decided they were having another baby. So my sister was here 9 months later.
So bad having kids. They figured
Right?
that out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's not so bad.
Okay. Regardless, and I know, and we'll talk about this later, because you've come to a place where you appreciate your parents for who they were and all of that. But at the time in your childhood, like you said, when you have a mentally ill parent, at least one parent, there was some alcoholism going on, all kinds of things. It's hard to, it's children, it's hard to deal with. So you definitely need to have good old Gus on your side through all of that.
Which I did. I literally had angels show up and wrap their arms around me. I have had enough experience that there is a power greater than ourselves watching out for us. Here's what I came away with from my childhood, but also from writing this book. Like, the two things are not mutually exclusive, right? So what I realized, particularly in hindsight, was that things that happen in our lives that seem awful at the time, because they feel awful at the time, when we look back on them, we can really see where there was a divine hand in the things that were happening. It does not mean that the things that were happening were good, but it does mean that something good comes out of them. We grow, we learn, we change, we develop as a result of these difficulties throughout our lives, but particularly our childhood. It molds who we are. And some people get, broken and become people that have a hard time loving other people, like my father. And some of us have to go through years of being pretty pissed off, because I ain't gonna lie, I was pretty pissed off for a long time, and then eventually come to a place where we find our own spiritual path, where we realize that it sounds so cheesy, and I get that, but love kind of is the answer. Love actually is always the answer. And that, I had a lot of therapy. I worked hard to try to find my sanity in the midst of all the insanity. And I'm not a bit sorry for any of it. I'm not mad at my parents anymore. I'm not mad at myself anymore. I'm not even mad at my ex-husband anymore. Like, I'm not mad at any of them. I just go, thanks, guys, for teaching me a lot of really important stuff. I'm sorry that you went through what you went through to make you who you were. And, with my father, rest in peace. With my mother, go in peace. That's all I could do.
So, all right. So let's go back, because I definitely want to talk about like how this came about for you, how you've gotten to this really peaceful place now. But for those who haven't read the book yet, I want to read, this is on page 34 in your book. And so you talked about how angels would wrap their arms around you. This is what she writes at the end of this. And then I'm going to have you tell us just a brief story of that. Okay. So it says, someone once told me that angels comfort children. I believe that's true. That day, I learned in the midst of chaos that there are those who will protect others who can't protect themselves, and angels who can bring comfort when no one else does. This world may seem scary and lonely, but maybe I'm never really alone. So how old would you say you were when this happened, when the angel, you felt the angel?
10.
About 10. Okay, so there was, as happened a lot, there was chaos going on in your household. If I remember correctly, was your dad was being arrested or something that day?
Yeah, so my father showed up. He was blowing holes in the neighbor's house with an old-fashioned gun, which is frowned upon in all neighborhoods, even in the 1970s. Yeah. So, and he was being abusive. He just pointed a gun at my mother, which her boyfriend at the time did not know, but he came home from work and he was angry at my father because my father inspired a lot of ire, and he punched him. And so I learned how interesting it is, even when an abuser is being awful, the people that love them, their kids, their wives, whatever, automatically want to protect them and get mad at the person who stands up for them.
Yes. Isn't that a strange phenomenon? Yeah.
It's a strange phenomenon, but I get it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I understand why it happens.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that was the first time I'd ever had anybody really stand up for us as a family, that it's not okay to behave that way. And then my father got arrested, and it was all very confusing and scary. And so I went in and laid down on my bed, and all of a sudden I felt the cat. We had a swinging bed, I should say. My father suspended our bed from the ceiling.
Sure. They were a bunch of hippies.
It was great, though, because you give it a little push and you get rocked to sleep, right? So I felt the cat jump up on the end of the bed. And as it got closer, I could feel that it was not a cat. It was the size of a person by the movement in the bed, and just, how you can tell what's climbing up next to you.
If it's a cat or a human, yeah.
I assumed it was my mom, and I felt these arms wrap around me. But what was different about that was this sense of absolute peace and comfort I felt was more than the love of your mother. It was just beautiful, but it felt great. And I assumed it was my mother, because who else would it be?
Right.
And then I rolled over in these arms, and there was no one there, but I could still feel the love. And then I heard my parents yelling at each other outside. So that was one of the first really significant moments I've had where I knew that I had had an encounter with an angel. And I've had people say, well, you must have been asleep. I have people, you imagine that. It doesn't matter what anybody says, because I know what happened. And I remember it vividly to this day.
And when we remember something really vividly from our childhood, it happened, right? Because we block out a lot of just insequential things from our childhood. We don't remember all, or most people don't. So that was one of the first times that you knew that the angels were there. So throughout your childhood, listen, you had all kinds of other stuff going. Am I right?
I did. Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, whatever. We all have parents. They have their things. No, but listen, you had all kinds of things going on. Not only were you dealing with these parents that were doing their best, but were not succeeding and doing a great job all the time.
They did not knock it out of the park. They did not.
They did not knock it out of the park. Okay. But you also, there were parts in your book where you talked about you dealt with eating disorders. Also, you had childhood sexual abuse that happened at the hands of a neighbor. And then no one, well, right?
So,
was it a neighbor in the neighborhood?
So who it was a man that prior to moving to Ketty, we lived on an Indian reservation called Big Bend. And while we were there, a homeless guy showed up in a van, and, these guys are charming. And my mother, bless her heart, is a very codependent person, obviously, or she would not have been with my father. And she decided that this man just needed someone to be kind to him. And so she allowed him to participate in our lives. And he was a predator. And he sexually abused me from the time I was 4 until I was 12. Or 5, excuse me, time I was 5 until I was 12. And it was awful. And he told me that he would, hurt my mother and my sister if I said it.
We're kids. We're scared. Yeah.
And put me in a weird position because I was the oldest of the kids in the neighborhood, felt very responsible for others. So I kind of had to go out of my way to kind of protect people. And then there's a whole layer of guilt that comes in because you feel like you're bringing it on yourself, because I'd rather it be me than my little sister. I'd rather it be me than my
Right. Then you
neighbors.
start to question, wait, did I want that? Like, no,
Exactly. Yeah,
your brain
exactly.
does awful
Yeah,
things.
it did awful things.
Yeah.
And probably the most awful piece is that when I finally did find the courage to come out and say, hey, this is happening and it's not okay, no one would believe me. My mother said, well, he kisses everybody like that. And that happens to everyone.
Which is the fear that predators embed in children anyway. No one's going to believe you. You're a kid. You're a crazy teenager now, whatever. No one's going to believe you.
Right.
And that became reality for you.
It becomes reality for a lot of people, unfortunately. For a lot of people, unfortunately.
And especially probably for your mom, she was locking that away somewhere in her brain. She just didn't want to deal with that for sure. Because I had the same kind of things from my childhood too.
I'm so sorry that you did.
Yeah. So I know exactly what you're saying when you say this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this is going on. In the midst of all of this, you have a near-death experience.
I did. Probably the most wonderful, beautiful thing that has ever happened in my whole life. Right around somewhere between 10 and 12. I wish I could pinpoint it exactly. But when you've been through this kind of trauma, timelines get fuzzy. It all sort of, it just becomes difficult to pin down the exact day on things, which, if I'm honest, I'm 50, almost 59 years old now. And
we don't remember that stuff anyway.
I don't remember what day it is now.
Yeah.
Thank God for my watch with the date on it so I can know, today's the 5th.
We'll say you were 11-ish, give or take.
Yeah. Okay. So I was with a group of friends, and one of them was developmentally delayed. We were swimming in a river that's regularly dredged for gold, or at least was regularly dredged for gold. So it would go flat, sandy, rocky bottom, and then all of a sudden drop off, 3 to 8 feet.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. Out of nowhere. And if you know those are there, if you can swim, it doesn't matter. But one of the girls I was with was a very large developmentally delayed young woman who could not swim. And it was my fault. I got frightened by a crawdad and I stepped backward into her and knocked her into the drop off. And she grabbed onto me and used me as a ladder to climb out.
Yeah. Okay.
And I remember what it felt like to have my lungs filled with water. It's very painful. And I remember struggling. And then I remember looking at myself struggling in the water and then stopping struggling. And then suddenly I was floating above the river, being able to see everything. I could see my hair floating on top of the water as my body was drifting away. I watched Rami climb out of the water and go up onto the beach and sit down. And
okay, so she climbed. You saved her, basically.
She saved herself. She saved herself by using me. But, no animosity there, because of course she did. She was just surviving.
Like in survival mode. Yeah,
not her fault at all.
No.
So all of a sudden, I was connected to a source of love that was so powerful, it overrode every other feeling I have ever had in my life. It was connection where I could hear almost a hum in the air. I felt connected to, this sounds insane, and I understand insanity runs in my family, but I promise I'm not crazy here. Or, okay, maybe I am, but I am telling the true story of what happened. I was connected to everything, from every grain of sand to every leaf on the tree to every person I've ever met to everything around. I felt like I was separate, but a part of this incredible love that ran like a thread through everything in the world and beyond.
You felt the oneness.
I felt the oneness. I felt this most divinely beautiful power that I could have stayed there. I wish I would have stayed there. Like, I can't tell you the number of times I'm like, people talk about being afraid to die. I'm like, oh no, it's really good. I promise it was great.
Don't you worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is not a thing to worry about. And
did you see what?
I didn't see a tunnel. I didn't see anybody else I knew. None of that stuff happened.
Was everything just very vibrant? Were you still vibrant, hair floating, and you just felt
at this point I was fascinated by everything going on around me. this connection I had to everything, this understanding. This is one of the things that I wanted to say on this podcast. So people talk about divine forgiveness. And I can tell you that from what my experience was, the minute I was no longer part of my body, I was connected to this divine love, this divine connection in such a way that I could never hurt anything. And I couldn't for two reasons. One is because I am love.
Mm-hmm.
Two is because I am so connected to everything else that the idea of doing it harm is senseless. There's just why would you? Because you'd be hurting yourself. So
we're all part of God.
All part of God.
Mm-hmm.
So I suspect that is what divine forgiveness is. If the minute you're no longer corporeal, you are connected, there's no need for forgiveness because there's absolutely no question if you would ever repeat the same behavior. You simply could not.
You would not. No,
you couldn't. You just couldn't. You wouldn't, but you couldn't because it defies all logic. It's just, you can't. I suspect that is what divine forgiveness is about. And the hard thing for people to wrap their head around is, we as humans, we want revenge. We want punishment. We want to know people have learned their lesson. That's all very human.
Yeah, karma's going to get you.
Karma's going to get you. And that all makes sense when we're here, but it makes no sense when we're there. It just doesn't. So that divine forgiveness comes from that. You don't have to believe in anything. I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday who I love and adore, who's very Catholic, and she's convinced there's hell. And I'm like, yeah, there's not. I am so confident.
All right, let me read this part in your book because you had this experience in that, and you just talked about divine forgiveness and about, religion. So this is about, you're talking in this chapter about you were at a church and you say, and this was a woman speaking, and you said, I was baffled by her willingness to believe that God only saved the souls of people who love Jesus. How could these adults not know it was all just a story? I had firsthand experience of what it was like to be outside of my body, and there was not a pearly gate to be found. God was not there at the door like a maitre d' turning away the Buddhists and Jews. God does not have an elite club. Duh. I loved that part. I was like, yes. And that is not me saying that Jesus isn't real. That's not what that is.
Of course not, because of course he was. Yes,
real.
Yes, you were.
Stories. I'm all on board. Jesus was amazing. That's not what we're saying, everybody. What we're saying is it makes zero sense to believe that God, like you said, has Jesus standing there with him and is just like a maitre d'. You're not on the list. You're not on the list. You're not on the list. Turning all these really great people away. Okay. Right. I have never, since I was a child, been able to get on board with that. And I was raised by a very strict Christian, especially my father. Okay. That never made sense to me. I was like, I feel like the God I know inside of me is not that God, So you felt in your near-death experience, you felt that oneness and that pure just love. It's just all love when we get there. Because I've talked to other guests about, we all want to believe that the serial killers are roasting in the depths of hell, right?
Because we're mad at them.
Because we're mad and we don't know how to make it right. And so we need to let that go and just be like, there's nothing to make right. Mm-hmm. It'll all go back to God and it'll all, there's lessons to be learned and we're all learning different ones.
And it doesn't mean that what people are doing is okay. Because it's not. There's a lot of things happening in this world that are super not okay. And I believe that while we're here, we have a responsibility to love as much as we possibly can, because that's the energy we all want out there, because that's what we want coming back to us. Yeah. So I feel like karma's a bit of a crapshoot in so much as all of this energy is flitting around out there that we've put out there one way or another. And how it lands might be more random than people like to believe. So it is in our best interest to put as much positive out there as we can, because that's what we'd like back. And negative energy is not a whole lot of fun to deal with.
Right. We're only going to get that back. So you cannot go wrong by trying to elevate yourself and be positive and do good and be in service and be kind to others, that is never going to lead you down the wrong path.
Exactly
right?
correct.
Stop worrying about all of the bad people and who's going to take care of them. Like, that's not our job.
Right. Exactly. It's not our job. Our job is even, and this has been freaking people out all week. So I did a post about, I do a meditation every morning. It's a breathwork meditation. That part doesn't really matter. The focus of my meditation is pulling in from the top of my head to the bottoms of my feet, divine light. And I fill myself up with it. And then I expand that divine light out into a bubble. And then I imagine whatever person I'm having conflict with, because welcome to life, there's that. It's always there's always going to be someone that is harder for you than others. That's just part of being alive. So I imagine that person, and if I'm really mad at him, I have to imagine him being a little kid. And then I just wrap my arms around them and I kiss them on top of the head and I tell them how loved they are. Not just my love, because I don't always feel super loving towards people, but I have felt that divine love and I know how powerful it is. And I know that this person that I'm wrapping in my arms and in my mind, within this light I've created, is just as loved as I am. No matter what, they are loved. It doesn't matter what they've done, doesn't matter how they feel, it doesn't matter. They are so loved. And I pour as much love light as I can into that person, and then I let them go out of the bubble and get on with my life. Because right now there's so much difficult things, so many difficult choices being made, so much going on that all of us can benefit, because you can't hurt yourself pulling divine light into yourself. And you can absolutely help someone else and yourself by using divine light to help you to resolve whatever negative feelings you're feeling towards somebody else are.
Because people may want to do this.
They should do this. I want everyone to do this.
Version of that I do. But so you do 40 breaths.
I do that. I ain't going to lie. I'm sober. I've been clean and sober since 2017. And this is pretty much the only high I get, is this little bit of hyperventilation I get to do in order to do this meditation. It feels great. So I do 40 of those breaths, and in the end, I blow out all my air. And that, as my air is out and I'm just sitting there, is when I focus on pulling divine light through the top of my head to the bottoms of my feet. And I
watch it come in like through your crown. It goes all the way through your body.
All the way down. You can line it up with your chakras, however you want to do it.
So you're filled with all this beautiful, loving light, right?
And then you, exactly. And then when you breathe in, after a minute of holding your breath out, and if you can't do a minute, don't do a minute. Do 45 seconds. Can't do 45 seconds, do 30. It doesn't matter, because the point is pulling the breath into you and then blowing all your air out, holding it, and then breathing in a deep breath and holding that. And when you breathe in the deep breath, it's easy for me, because I'm breathing in, to imagine expanding out into a bubble of light. So now it's not just a beam, it's a bubble of light that I'm in, that I can pull another person into. Wrap them in my arms.
But you're not putting the people you're pissed off at in their own bubble. They're coming in your
and I'm holding them in my arms.
Oh, you're just embracing them.
Embracing them with the love that I felt when I was connected.
If someone's so bad that you're like, you just pretend they're a kid. They're a child. And that makes me easier to hug them. Okay.
Yeah, that kid, like I've done it, this sound, with the man who molested me, who, that I should never be able to do that, but I don't have to, because I'm pulling them into the bubble and showering them in the divine love I felt when I was connected on the other side.
Yeah. So you're giving that love, God's love, not necessarily you're loving that person. You're just letting them feel that love with you.
Yes.
And
I'm feeling it too. Yeah. Because I'm pulling it into me.
And then you just send them out of your bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And you're done. And where did you visualize them just like floating off, or where do they go?
Yeah. Usually I'm mad at them, so I don't care what they do after that. It's just not the truth.
They're gone. They're out of your bubble.
I have done my part for you. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. I'm just trying to bring them into my bubble, because what I've done, like with a cord cutting meditation. So what I've done is visualized those people let's just say also I've done this with my abuser.
Mm-hmm.
You put him in the bubble. I don't put him in my bubble. Okay.
Right.
He's in a bubble and there's like a cord attached. And it's a loving bubble though. It's, for me, it's like you can make it a pretty color, pretty pink, white, iridescent. It's not a prison you're putting him in. You're putting him in a little love bubble. Okay. And you're saying, I don't approve of what you did, but I can now appreciate where I am in my life and what it did for me, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like to watch the bubble. The cord gets cut. Sometimes it's like my angels come through with their wings and cut the bubbles away from me. Sometimes it's whatever. Anyway, and then I watch that bubble literally go back to what I envision as God. So basically I'm saying, you're no longer on my path. You're no longer connected to me in any way. I don't care what happens to you now. I'm just sending you back to God's love to do whatever you were meant to do now, right? Because you weren't meant to be in my life anymore.
Beautiful.
I know that. And I'm appreciative of the moment. It sounds weird to say I appreciate what you did, but
I understand.
I appreciate what it did for me, for me and made me who I am. And I just usually watch that bubble. And it's very important during that we don't wish them harm. This is not a harmful thing. You actually need to feel them being absorbed into God's love again. And then you're done with it. Because that was part of my healing journey too. So I love that you're using this bubble thing. I've never brought anybody into my bubble, so I'll have to try bring them into my bubble. I typically make them stay in their own bubble, Hilary.
So, and that is what I had done for years. Like my parents, they were hippies. So I was introduced to transcendental meditation when I was 8. So bless them for that. Like they were on a spiritual journey. My mom is one of the biggest spiritual seekers I've ever known. Ultimately, I think part of the struggle for her is that she has always looked for her connection on the outside of herself. And what I learned in my moments connected was that it absolutely is inside of us, also all around us. But it is easier for me, even with the things I've been through, to recognize that I have to visualize that light coming into myself in order to really connect to it.
Yeah,
I would love it if I could find it on the inside of myself all the time. I'm not that enlightened. I have to try to pull it in from the outside.
Any of us are. That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. Exactly.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, if I figure that one out, I'll probably die the next day or 5 minutes later.
So you were blessed with a son,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a spiritual connection from like a very young age.
Always
like,
did.
I was right there with him too for you. He was 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, do you remember when I was a girl named Sarah? He kind of still remembered past lives.
He did.
And what else did he have going on?
He walked past me one day. I was in the kitchen and said, "Whoa." And he was 5. And I go, "What?" He goes, "You were just an Indian woman washing dishes in a sink." And I was like, "That's weird." I don't know what else I'm going to say because I was only 23 and 25 at that time. So I was not.
You weren't in, like,
not ready.
You had felt this all-encompassing love, and angels had wrapped their arms around you and that, but you hadn't wrapped your brain around all that yet.
Correct. And I still haven't wrapped my head around all that, if I'm honest with you.
You say in your book, you were talking to Gus. You said, "Gus, I formally decline reincarnation." Like you didn't care. You were like, "Listen, I've done enough in this lifetime. I don't think I need to do this again."
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to. Like,
no.
Yeah, I'm over it.
The plan. But you're over it. Yeah. Well, and guys, read the book. You'll see why she feels over it. Do you feel like maybe this is your last time at this?
Well, also remember, I have been connected to the divine. I know how spectacular that is. Like, this pales in comparison. It just does. So I'm not saying life is awful. I'm not saying anything like that. Yes, being on this planet is great. And there's so many fun things to do and things to see and ways to be in service and people to love and whose company we can all enjoy. Like, that's all true. And the other side's pretty great. I'm just saying.
And this is just another person telling us, you guys, we have nothing to fear with death. It's going to be amazing.
Right?
All of the things to fear are here where we are.
That's right.
Now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you've never really felt that there was an actual hell either. Like God is not as punitive as some religions make him. him or
Yeah,
her.
love
God,
is not punitive. Like,
no.
show me one time that love has ever punished anything without true love, without the intention of someone learning something. There may be a consequence to teach, but when I was connected, I was pure love. So there was no need to teach me how not to hurt myself or anything else because I was
Yeah,
love.
you had no
Love
desire for
doesn't
that.
hurt anything.
No,
So,
no, no, no,
yeah,
no, no.
I think the hell, honestly, is the lack of connection we feel down here. That's, to me, what hell is.
That feels accurate.
Right?
That feels accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So you've gotten through this childhood. You know the angels are near. You have felt the oneness, God's love, all of these things. You're heading into adulthood, right? You should have it all figured out. Nope. There's lots still going on, you guys. There's still a lot going on.
There's
So
always
did you,
so much.
because you struggled with alcoholism yourself.
Right?
Your dad struggled. Did your mom have any substance abuse or no?
No, my mom has abused substances, but mom was not an addict.
Not an addict, though.
Mom is not an addict, to the best of my
It's not an
knowledge.
addict.
And I
Okay.
can tell you what's true for me. I feel blessed and lucky because I did plenty of partying. I'm grateful that I'm not somebody who's ever been interested in drugs. Like, yeah, I've smoked a
Yeah.
little pot. I've tried a ton of stuff because my parents gave it all to me.
Well,
But
I believe that for your 18th birthday, someone gave you cocaine.
1.5 grams of cocaine, yes, they did.
Yeah,
And
but
I didn't like it, so I gave it all away. I didn't even realize I could be arrested for that. I was hoping I'd get hooked so that I could be a new customer.
So you could be a new customer, and you were like, "No, thank you. I'm going to disperse this to everyone else."
That's
Okay.
right.
So that was a bless. That was Gus helping you out there too.
Right. And I
So-
drank normal. I mean, I lived my life.
Yeah, a lot of people start drinking their teen years. Was that when it started, or
It's not when
No.
it started. I got really drunk with a boyfriend once and blacked out and was like, oh, yeah, I didn't enjoy that. And then, I had a baby at 20. So I was the responsible one. I was the person who worked 2 jobs and, was always the designated driver. Even in high school, I was the designated driver. Like I was rebelling against my parents, but also learning from what I saw with my parents. It's not who I wanted to be.
because the father of your son also had addiction?
Yeah, he did. Because we gravitate towards what we're familiar with, even if it's
That's what you
uncomfortable,
said.
right?
You talked about and things repeat themselves. Yeah, there's a cycle that we're here to break. Yeah. So when exactly? Okay, obviously you were an alcoholic long before you realized you were an alcoholic, which is typically the case. Yes. So when did you get to the point? What happened that made you know I'm an alcoholic?
So, again, I drank pretty normally. Now, granted, I was raised by hippies, so my bar for normal might be a little different. My husband is definitely a very normal drinker, but I also know a lot of people that aren't alcoholics that can be pretty healthy partiers. That said, when I noticed the change for me was when I hit menopause. I truly believe, and it's documented, that there is a correlation between the hormone change and women particularly losing control of their drinking. We call it the invisible line in AA. So I went from, having 2 drinks and having that be fine to suddenly now I want 3 drinks regularly. I was about 48.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I'm getting real sneaky about my drinking and I'm hiding booze. And
So
then
this is midlife. This was not I've been drinking since I was 20 like this.
No. It really wasn't. It's a hard one for people to wrap their heads around, but people like my family was shocked when I said I was an alcoholic. They could not believe it because that's just not who I had ever been.
Good at it.
Well, I was
hiding it.
I was because my hiding it didn't start happening until I was, like I said, 48. That's really when, and I'd gotten married. And my husband, was 49 when I started hiding it because I got married just a month before I turned 49. So, it just hit me hard and fast. I went down hard. I drank a lot, like a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka a day by the time I was done drinking. Yeah, when I went into the hospital, I had a blood alcohol level of 4.41, which is ridiculous. And I remember it. And the doctor said, you should be dead or in a coma. And I was like, you're a dick.
It's talking away. Yeah, you
Yeah.
were like, I don't like you.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. You're kind
I'm
of
a
a
fan of
jerk.
this guy. Yeah.
Exactly.
In your
So
mind, you kind of thought it was fine, right? You were functioning.
I knew it wasn't fine. By the time I
Yeah.
wound up at the emergency room, I knew I was in trouble. But
When you were
yeah.
sneaking alcohol, when you were working and you were, because you had said in the book, like sometimes you'd have to take vodka in the morning just so your hand wouldn't tremor to put your fake lashes on.
Girl, yes, false eyelashes every day. And when it's to the point where I can't hold my hand steady enough to get my eyelashes on, shit has gone sideways. That's how I know it was bad.
Your solution was you knew that was a detox, that was something happening because you needed vodka.
Yeah, I needed to take a shot in order to get straight. Yeah.
And you got to the point where if you were working too long during the day at work, you would have to go
super conveniently located next door to a
liquor store.
It was great. But then I had to do rounds because I couldn't keep going to the same liquor store because I didn't want them to know how much I was drinking. So I had like 4 liquor stores in a rotation. So nobody would, and then I would buy vodka from Costco because I could get a giant bottle and a funnel and put it in the smaller bottles so I could strategically hide those.
Nobody was questioning you. It's Costco. We buy in bulk. There's no way to buy that at Costco. So that made it okay. So you knew, though. You knew, obviously, because you were hiding. At that point, you were starting to hide the habit.
Right.
You knew it was not good for you.
Right.
But again, that's addiction. Yeah.
It was addiction. I knew it wasn't good for me and I couldn't stop. And I kept trying. I would tell myself every morning, I'm not going to drink tonight. And then tonight it'd roll around and I'd be like, I'll just have 1. All right, I'll just have 2. You know what? I've already had 2. I may as well have 3. Right?
I'm going to start my diet Monday.
Exactly.
I'm diet Monday. Right. And by Tuesday, I'm going to start the next Monday.
Right. Exactly.
It's the same type of thing. Okay. So you find yourself in the hospital and you're pretty sick. Mm-hmm. And they then tell you, you've done a little number on your liver, Hilary. They say,
they didn't know what I'd done to my liver because nobody knew you were alcoholic. Nobody knew I was an alcoholic, including my husband, my sister, nobody. So when I landed in the hospital and they came in and told me that I needed a liver transplant or I was going to die, it was pretty shocking for all of us. Mm, yeah. And thank God I spent a month in the hospital. And there's a thing called a MELD score, stands for Model for End-Stage Liver Disease. You get put on the liver transplant list when your MELD score is 15. When I got to the hospital, mine was already at 18.
Oh, you were there.
If you're a type B blood type, it's different for different blood types. But a type B, you get the transplant the earliest, which would have been at 26, the MELD score of 26. I got all the way up to 25. And then I got transferred to UCSF and they detoxed me off everything that Kaiser had me on. And the minute they did, my liver got better. And within 3 days, it had gone down to 20 and they sent me home after literally 4 weeks being in the hospital on the highest possible doses of Dilaudid and Ativan you can have at Kaiser. UCSF cold turkey detoxed me off everything and then sent me home.
That had to be bad. Cold turkey?
It was
awful.
It was awful. And I had to sign all this paperwork saying that I wouldn't drink alcohol, I wouldn't smoke pot, I wouldn't take any over-the-counter medications if I got a cold. I wouldn't, it didn't matter.
No, because if you guys aren't here at home to be on the list to get a liver transplant, you have to prove you've been sober for at least a year.
That is correct.
Even if a liver comes up, you're not getting it until you prove you're going to take care of the new liver.
That's correct. And that's fair because there's 17,000 people a year who need a liver transplant and only 5,000 who get them. So a lot of people are dying because they couldn't get a liver transplant. So they're not going to waste one on somebody who's just going to foul it out.
No.
So I thought of all of these papers I was signing that the one thing that was going to be a problem for me was going to be salt because I love to cook. And now I can't drink. I can't do anything else that's fun.
Now they're telling you no salt.
No salt. And I was like, you people are crazy. I'm never doing that. So 2 months later, right before Christmas, they put me on a whole bunch of different medications, obviously, because of my liver. Well, I was allergic to something. And one of them made it so that the bottoms of my feet hurt so bad I couldn't walk. And I kept calling UCF saying, this is not right. And they understandably believed that I was just being an addict who wanted pain medication. And that actually wasn't the case. I really did just want them to figure out what was making my feet hurt. And they wouldn't do it. So then I decided I was fine with just dying. Like, I've been dead. It's pretty great. This is not great. I'm out of here. And I started drinking again. And I immediately was back up to a 750 milliliter
So to
bottle.
be clear, you took those 35 pills and said, I'm done. I'm not
Yes.
taking this stuff
Thank you.
anymore.
Yeah. I stopped taking all
going
of
to
them
go
at
back
once.
to drinking, and really with the intention of dying. You were suicidal at that point.
I was.
Because you had decided, screw it. You've already felt what it's like on the other side. It's amazing. And you were like, I'm calling it.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
So what happened was, first of all, never stop taking all of the medications at once, especially when some of them are psych meds, because that's what they put you on when they know that you are going to be depressed because you need a liver transplant. Like, it's pretty logical going to happen. So yeah, don't ever do that. I did that. Got super depressed, wanted to die, went back to drinking, and then Christmas Day rolled around, and my son came and spent the night on Christmas Eve. And I woke up in the Christmas morning, and my husband had got us both all these lovely gifts, and I got to make Eggs Benedict for my son Christmas Day. And I had such a nice Christmas that I went, oh, I think I want to die. I think I want more Christmases with my son.
I want to do this.
I want to, yeah. And then I couldn't stop. And so by New Year's Eve, I was miserable and sitting in the bed with the curtains drawn, watching Netflix. And my husband came home from work, and I just came clean. I said, because he didn't even realize I'd gone back to drinking. Everybody thought it was just because I'd been on so many meds, I wasn't right in my head anyway. So
right. So,
being drunk didn't.
Strange behavior had plenty of reasons. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So my husband was amazing about it. I tried to detox myself that time. I went from drinking vodka to wine, 2 bottles of wine a day, then 1.5 bottles of wine. And I managed to wean myself off the booze, but I was miserable because when you're an alcoholic, you can either control your drinking or enjoy your drinking, but you can't do both.
No.
So, so I lasted until Valentine's Day. And then I decided to have a glass of wine. And then shortly after that, it was back to the races. And then March 13th, 2018, I finally realized I was in big trouble. I dropped to my knees on March 12th, sobbing, and said to the divine, I cannot do this myself. I need help. You got to do something. And the next morning, my husband woke up and called the AA hotline. And 2 days later, and took me to 2 AA meetings that I was absolutely hammered for both AA meetings. People in AA were so great. They were so nice to me in spite of myself. And then that Monday, I went into the hospital, the ER, and the next day I was in rehab, and I've been clean and sober ever since. So, and I'm grateful. The things that I got back, because one of the things about being in your cups, as we call it, when you're drinking, you lose all connection you have to a power greater than yourself. Your sense of the divine disappears because you're too obsessed and too busy dampening all of your emotions that you can't feel the divine anymore. So getting sober and reconnecting to this power greater than myself, one of the best things that has happened ever. Because I was so much more clear-headed and so much more clear on what my intention was, which is to feel that connection again.
So you were able to reunite with that oneness, that divine, with Gus, and say,
reunited with Gus, yeah.
Yes. And that never left. Gus was always there, but you just were connecting the same way.
I wasn't. I'd had myself convinced that the divine was kind of like my dog, loved me completely, could show me where the treats were, but had no opposable thumbs and couldn't really do much for me. And that's insane, right? Because the divine is limitless. It can do all kinds of things. As I put in my book, it's done so
much.
An
example, you guys, all the way down to helping her find an Apple Watch. Your intuition kept telling you, go home, you go this watch that you had just bought for your husband. Go home. And you were like, I just need a little retail therapy real quick. I just need to stop over at the store and try on some earrings. Okay.
It was more than my intuition, Jen. It was Gus. Like it was like somebody was screaming in my ear, go home, you're going to lose your watch. And I ignored it. And it happened 3 times, like almost a voice. If it had been any louder, it would have been actual words in my ear. I just ignored it because I wanted to go shopping. And next thing you know,
home and that watch
with my watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had lost
You
my
actually,
watch.
and you went a long time. She rebought the watch, you guys. All of the things she said, okay, I guess I'm not finding it. After calling the store daily, like, did anyone turn it in?
Oh,
Did anyone turn it in for months? And so then all of a sudden you thought you'd just give Gus a little way to prove himself. And you were like,
yeah. So I was talking to a group of friends, and we were talking about my connection to Gus, and somebody said, you have a great relationship with your higher power. And I said, yeah, well, if it liked me that much, it'd bring back my watch. And I'd really beaten myself up for having lost it when I got such a clear message
yeah.
it was going to happen.
Uh-huh.
And so everybody had heard that what a dummy I was. And the next morning I woke up and Nordstrom called and said, did you lose something here? And I was like, well, yeah, 2.5 months ago. And she said, can you tell me what it was? And I'm like, yeah, it was an Apple Watch and a charger. And she said, well, it's here. I said,
They
how,
found
what?
in the safe, you
Yeah.
guys.
And I said, well, how did it end up there? She goes, I don't know. We just found it in the safe this morning. And I literally asked them to check the safe multiple times every day for a week.
Like, okay, you were just joking around with your friends. If Gus loved me so much, and then the next day, there's your Apple Watch. That's Gus saying, okay, girl, listen, I do love you that much. Here's your damn watch.
It's like the time I was on a diet and I was really struggling to be good. I'd lost 16 pounds on Weight Watchers, but the holidays rolled around and I was just trying to get to eat some food that tasted good instead of trying to watch everything I put in my face. And I just wasn't being good. And I said, Gus, I really, really don't want to gain my weight back, but I do not even want to shop for food that's good for me. I need help. And that day, my husband comes home from work and he says, your groceries are on the porch. I don't know why he gets super grumpy when I order online groceries. I almost never do it. And I was like, I didn't order any groceries.
For yourself and get groceries. Yeah. No,
Right.
we get easy now. We just order it. Yeah.
No.
I love it.
Well, I don't usually, and I didn't this time either, ironically. And I said, I didn't order any groceries. He said, well, they're on their porch. And I go out and there's 5 bags, partially full bags of groceries sitting on the porch with no name on them. There's a tag with a number on it. So I call Whole Foods, which is where they came from. I said, I got somebody else's groceries. She said, well, Amazon delivers those. We have no way of tracking where they belong. And I was like, well, what do I do? And she said, well, I guess you just Merry Christmas. They're your groceries now. Whoever bought them will get a new order. And so I left them on the porch for like a half hour because I wanted, in case somebody came looking for them. But then I realized there might be ice cream in there. So I had to unpack them. There was not ice cream in there. But what there was in there was salmon and ground beef and so much fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, a bottle of distilled water. There was even a full pepper grinder, and I'd just run out of pepper. The only thing in those bags that was not good for me was a bar of dark chocolate with toffee and pretzels in it. And that was only 3 points for a quarter of it on Weight Watchers. Like, Gus, so epic.
You were counting the points as you went through the bag.
Yeah. The thing is, I made a very specific request. Like, I don't even want to shop for this stuff. And Gus was like, I got you.
Oh, send you some damn groceries.
Right. Yeah. It was crazy. Just crazy. And I think it's true for everybody. People get so much more taken care of than they think they are, but most of us aren't looking for it. Most of us, when good things happen, just may have gratitude, but we write it off as a coincidence, or I'm not sure. But now with
pay attention, I'm sure you've been taught like
you pay attention. The more you see, the more you see.
You. Oh, I get it. Because sometimes things happen, and I'll see 11 angel numbers. There's different things, and you're like, I see you. All right. Yep, you're here. You're helping me out. I love it. So, all right. You guys, you're going to have to read the book because we've barely touched on what this sweet woman has gone through. But
it's not about what I've gone through so much as how I found my relationship with my higher power. Right.
This is what I want to get to now. So you can read about that. But I want to talk just briefly here about how this has helped you heal.
Right.
That finding God, that's the key. Because, I want you guys to relate with Hilary because you've been through your stuff like she's been through hers. But that's not the point. The point is what coming out of that does. How do we heal? How do we get better? How do we connect with our higher power better, stay on the right path, blah, blah, blah. So tell me a little bit about the healing process for you.
So I think there's a few things. One is that I did do 30 years of regular therapy. And I do believe that helped a lot. I was really clear that I wasn't going to let somebody molesting me as a kid take away my sexuality and my ability to enjoy it. So I worked hard on that. I did 7 years of therapy 3 times a week, going to incest survivor groups and others. It's a long story.
We've been doing the work for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Carl was not the only person who hurt me when I was a kid. That said, I did the work there, but probably the two most healing things I've ever done that have connected me with a higher power. One was working the 12 steps of AA, which those 12 steps work for everybody, whether you're sober or not. And they have everybody's pretty much got some vice that they wish they could get rid of. And the 12 steps, whether you eat too much, drink too much, smoke too much, swear too much, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is you're trying to stop doing.
12 steps to stop my sugar addiction.
Right. Yes.
Seriously.
I know. Yes.
Yeah. Thing.
I hear you. It is.
So the 12 steps are for everyone. So if
you're
out
everyone
there
and they're powerful,
you're like, I don't need the 12 steps. I don't do drugs. I'm not an alcoholic. Okay. You could still work those steps and benefit for sure.
Absolutely.
I've read the book on it too, and for sure.
Yeah, for sure. They work. And then, so probably the most healing thing I've ever done for myself is writing my memoirs. And the reason it did is because, as you know, some of these stories were difficult to relay. They were difficult to live through. They can even be a little difficult to read because I'm very honest about what happened. I don't pull any punches and I don't try to sugarcoat anything.
Right.
That said, the first time I wrote it, I ate a lot of cookies because sugar is also one of my addictions now. I ate a lot of cookies and I tried to stuff my feelings as I'm processing through this stuff to the best of my ability. And then I had to edit those stories and there were less cookies, still cookies. And then I sent my book to someone else to edit. And on the third round of edits, what she required me to do was tell more of the story, which was hard because I didn't want to, and also add in other people's perspectives. What happened was I was forced to see things more from my sister's perspective, my mother's perspective, my father's perspective. And by the fourth round of edits on this book, I had become the observer in the story. And because of that, my judgment of other people's behaviors in the story and my own behavior in the story shifted. And I was able to see it objectively and lose any residual anger or resentment that had been left behind. And I freed myself of this shit that I thought I'd gotten rid of years ago through all my talk therapy. Anything that was lingering was gone. And the proof of that really came in the final story in the book, where I went back to the town I'd grown up in that I never wanted to go back to because the time when 30 years ago when I visited it, I got so sick, I ended up in the hospital because my body just didn't want to be there.
Couldn't be there. Yep.
And when I went back, all of the stuff, it was just a place. I'd lost all of the energy that I had on it that was holding me back that I didn't even know was there. So the process of writing out, looking back, recognizing where the hand of the divine was throughout the story, interwoven in these stories that seem awful because there's awful there. Also,
but there had this good in it too.
Yes, it had this beautiful, education and connection and GUS. It just had the divine's hand in it. Like even if things were hard, I was never alone. It wasn't that I was going through it all by myself. Just most of the time, we can't tell when the divine is right next to us, lifting us up. It's like that old thing people talk about. You see one set of footprints in the sand, and that's because that's when God is carrying you, right?
Carrying you, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see where I was carried.
And so do you feel like sharing your stories, and this is for everyone out there listening who has their own story inside too, has been more freeing than holding it all inside? Because holding
Absolutely.
it can make us ill, physically,
yes,
mentally, emotionally ill. So sharing your story, because your story, it feels unique to you, but guess what? No, we are all going through this. There's somebody who's been through the same things you've been through out there, for sure. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, because even reading through the book for me, some of these sections, I was like, oh, I know exactly what she was feeling. I know exactly what was happening at that point in her life. Right. And those
Right.
are the connections we make. Our stories don't have to be the same. Right. But we're experiencing the same feelings and the same need to connect with the divine.
Right.
Right. And so,
And each other.
within a book, for some people out there, maybe you're not going to write a whole book about your things. Maybe you're just journaling for yourself. Maybe you just start sharing the stories with the people closest to you. Do you have suggestions for what you've seen work for others or for you as far as opening, sharing? Because a lot of us think we healed our wounds. I did the same thing. Went to therapy every decade. Oh, it's healed now. It's all better, isn't it? And then all of a sudden, it just breaks back open. You thought you sewed it up and it was a damn Band-Aid.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so would you have any other suggestions for how people may be on a healing journey right now can do that?
Yeah, I do. So I think if you're a writer, write it out, but don't stop there. Write it out, take a break, a week, a month, whatever break you need, and then go back and edit it. Look at it, and then look at whether or not you're seeing all the perspectives, because it's really easy to stay in our self-righteous place of how we were impacted. It is really hard to look at why other people behaved the way they did, what was going on with them. But that is the rest of the story. And when you can see the whole story, the bigger picture of it, you stop being a victim and you start to be a character. And that is super freeing, because I hate being a victim. I feel so powerless when I'm a victim, but I am empowered when I can go, oh, this happened, and here's what I learned from it. And here's where the divine was with me during it. That shifts the dynamic from being someone who was abused to someone who has survived abuse, someone who has thrived as a result.
You kind of reconciled the relationship with your parents too.
Correct. Yeah. And ironically, my mom stopped speaking to me. She was furious I wrote this book. Oh my God, was she mad? Called me a liar. I'm making it all up.
Oh, because her story, she's only seeing it from her perspective.
That's right.
Yeah. She hasn't looked at it from all the other, and it takes a lot of strength and bravery to look at it from other angles. That's probably the hardest part is to say, what part did I have? Like, or what was going on in their life that made them act that way?
There you go.
What do I not understand?
Yeah, because sometimes our part, especially when we're little kids, is that we were there. And
we don't have fault, even though sometimes we thought we had fault. We don't have fault, but we also have to get to this age to look back and go, oh, like all of these things were going on in their lives too, though.
Right.
Yeah. So your mom was ticked that you put this book out, and then have you she's wrapped your brain around it a little bit now?
Just on the 26th, 26th of January, and I published the book on the 26th of July. So yeah.
For a minute. She's there.
Yeah, it took a minute. She finally got here. So I was going to say, writing, I think if you're a writer, that is a great way to heal a lot of things. I can say I'm seeing a lot of depression right now. There's a lot of people that are really struggling because there's a lot of hard stuff in the world. And what seems to be true is, one of the things I learned along the way is that our creativity is Gus's way of expressing itself through us. So you don't have to be a great painter to paint. You don't have to be a great chef to cook. But when you do take those creative juices and put them out there, depression tends to lessen. I'm not saying it's going to take it away completely. So I would just wanted to take a minute to encourage people that if you're struggling, find a creative outlet. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's dance, if it's music, if it's cooking, if it's cake decorating. It really doesn't matter what thing you like to do. If it's just playing with your, dress up with your kids, whatever that thing is,
to find something that you enjoy.
Do more of that. But that, believe it or not, is essentially pulling in divine light through the top of your head and down to the bottom of your toes. When you're being creative, you are connecting to the divine more than most people realize. It is a direct channel. So I encourage folks that are feeling down.
If you're trying to, and starting and wanting to connect with whatever you could, with GUS, God, source, the divine, whatever it is that you're trying to feel connected with, because you're not alone. We've established that here. You might feel alone right now, but you are not alone.
You are not
You're always
alone.
surrounded by your angels, GUS. You've got a team that's right there waiting for you. So you are not alone. So it is easy. That's a way to connect, because we've heard that from a lot of people, like follow your passion. What makes you feel good inside? Do more of that.
Yes.
That's how you find it.
That's how you find
feel,
it.
Yeah,
And
you have a near-death experience like you did to feel it. You can still get to that oneness.
And your creativity does not have to make you money. And you don't have to be great at it. Those are two lies that we tell ourselves. If you're an artist, if you're not making money, somehow you're not really an artist. No, that's not true. And that if you can't.
Crayons in an adult coloring book.
That's it. Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. Exactly. You'll feel better if you do it. Yeah. Connect to your creativity. You won't be sorry you did.
No.
And then I was just going to tell a quick story, because I love this story, and I think it reminds people that angels are everywhere and you don't know who they're going to be. So when I own a hair salon, and when I was building out the salon, I was still working full-time somewhere else. I was trying to build my salon. My son had taken off for 2 weeks. He was 17. He was doing his own journey, and he was angry and would not tell me where he was, and it was awful. I was probably the most stressed I've ever been. And a friend of mine invited me to dinner. And so we went to dinner at the seafood restaurant in Berkeley, and I smoked cigarettes at the time, and I didn't eat because I had eating disorders, but I didn't eat when I was stressed. So I wasn't really hungry. And I ordered a seafood pasta because I knew that was my son's favorite, and I knew I would have leftovers. So when we were done, my friend was sweet. He was paying the check, and I went outside to have a cigarette. And as I'm standing there smoking my cigarette, I look over, and there's this homeless man, I assume homeless man, standing there. And he was this tall black man with these just piercing yellow-brown eyes, and such a handsome face, but he's wearing these pants that are frayed at the bottom and a jacket that's dirty and stained. And he starts walking towards me, and I started to reach into my purse, and he said, hello, miss. No, I want that. And he pointed at my to-go box. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't give you this. It's for my son. And he got closer to me than I'm comfortable with, but nothing in my intuition told me that this man was dangerous. And I've got pretty good radar for that. So as he got closer, he bent down, and I looked down, and he bent down and he caught my eye, and he said, I see your pain. And then I'm trying even harder not to let him see me, because now my eyes fill with tears, because I am not used to people calling me out on that. Right. And he said, the problem is never as great as the worry. And it stopped me in my tracks, because I knew it was true, down to the core of my being. And then he pointed at my box again. And I looked at it, and I really, I said, it's for my son. And he just looked at me, and I handed the box to him. Oh, no, first I tried to give him $5. I tried to give him $5. Like, here, you can buy something else. And he said, I don't want your money. I want that.
You get that pasta for $5.
Right? And but he didn't know what was in the box. And so I handed it to him, and I went home that night. And 3 days later, I woke up in the morning, and I went to go outside to have a cigarette, and my son was sleeping on the porch. And he came home. And so that was great. And the thing is, that pasta would have spoiled.
Yeah. It was meant to go to that man, and he was meant to say those words to you.
To this day, I have I've gotten myself through tax audits, breakups, alcoholism, like so many different traumatic moments with the words, the problem is never as great as the worry. I know that homeless black man with beautiful yellow-brown eyes was an angel, because angels are everywhere, and they show up in people that you do not expect. And sometimes they just show up in a person for a minute and then leave. But keep your eyes open, because angels are everywhere. There's so many more of them than we realize. And the more we look for them, the more we're going to see them.
Yes, we just have to be open to all of these things.
Yeah, it's all about remembering that Gus is everywhere.
This is right along. So this is at the very end of your book. Okay. I'm going to read one more excerpt here for you guys. So it says, "This world is hard and seems to be getting scarier every day. I can't explain why so much awfulness can continue on this planet when my higher power can retrieve an iWatch and warn me against an attack. I want to believe that there is some kind of divine plan, but maybe we're all just playing in the equivalent of the divine backyard, and the worst thing that can happen to us is that we end up back inside the great universal sanctuary without a body, but with a greater understanding of what it all means." And that, for me, summed it all up a little bit, the whole book, because it was like, no, that's true. We worry. And like you said, the worry's greater than the problem. We worry, when really we're going to learn these lessons. We're going to return back to that oneness, to God's divine love. Just having learned the lessons we needed to, it's all going to be fine. We don't have to worry as much as we're worrying. We need to just trust. We need to just trust good old Gus, that he's got our back, and so do the angels. And we tap in. And like you said, we follow our passions. We be our authentic selves like we were meant to be. And then when this life ends, we're going to head back to the most beautiful, beautiful, beautiful love and light. Yeah. And then we'll figure out what's next. You've already told Gus you're not coming back, but
I'm not coming back. I'm going back there.
You're going back there, and maybe you're going to get sent somewhere else. We don't even know. We don't know what's all going on out there. But right now, all we have to know is that we're here for a reason. Follow our path, our passion, look for Gus, be kind to others, right? The best we can. It's all going to be fine.
And love is always the answer.
And love is always the answer. And love is not always the easy answer.
No, it's often not the easy answer.
Love is always the answer. And that's really what God's trying to get us to figure out.
Right.
Love is the answer, not all this craziness we have going on. And that doesn't mean let people get away with their shit. That's not what we're saying.
Because that's not loving yourself. Like if we're letting people get away with things, then someone's not getting loved in that scenario.
Then it's us when we let people do those things to us.
Right.
But we don't need to purposely be horrible to other people.
Right. Exactly. And if you do, it's okay. Forgive yourself.
You got to forgive yourself and do better. But just do better next time. Yeah.
Keep
Say
trying.
we're sorry. All of the good things.
Own your shit.
Do you have anything new going on? What's next in Hilary World?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you, but Are
you kind of in that spot where we're at sometimes where it's like, just going to wait and see what comes next?
I'm having fun seeing what's happening with this book. I think meeting you, Jen, is a perfect example of Gus. Because you and I had never heard of each other ever.
Never.
And how did you find my book?
Listen, I was trying to think about that. I think you may have asked me that. And here's what happens a lot for me, because I am guided a lot by my intuition now too, and just gut feelings and signs and all these things. So sometimes I will be, let's say, listening to a podcast. Okay, someone's podcast. And there'll be an author on talking about a book or whatever. So I'll be like, oh, I think I want to read that book. So I will go order their book. And then, like you order a book and then there's a bunch of similar suggested books underneath it. Wherever.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this is how we linked, because I felt like then sometimes I see those suggestions and one will just stand out to me. And I'll be like, add that one to the cart too. Fun, and sometimes I'll forget about them and then they'll show up from Amazon, whether I pre-ordered or ordered. And I'll be like, oh, that's right. I want to read that book. And so I think that's what happened. It was just a series of events that led me to your book, because you don't have some huge campaign going on, right? You don't have an Oprah right now showing your book. Like, so I just saying, but your book, it will find the right people. This is what I believe. Whether it's a book, a podcast, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It will find the right people. You'll find the right people, right, that you're meant to connect with. So it's going to be exciting, as things grow with the book.
And knowing that it's helping people, knowing that it's helping people that have been sexually assaulted, sexually abused, that need to know that they're not alone. and that you can work through it and even find forgiveness for yourself and for the people that have hurt you, people that have been through alcoholism. I'm really raw and honest about what my story is in there in a way that has shocked a lot of people, but has also helped a lot of people. Just telling the truth about what it's like to have a father who was bipolar with schizophrenic tendencies and a mother that was extremely codependent about it. Like putting all of the real out there for people to relate to is great.
You're not sugarcoating anything in this book.
I try not to sugarcoat anything,
I
but also, right. But also being equally as willing to admit that my faith is based on my experience, and I'm really clear that there is a power greater than myself. I don't know exactly what it looks like. I'm 100% sure it's love. That I know for sure. I don't know what else it's capable of doing, but I bet it's a whole lot more than the rest of us even start to wrap our heads around. You know what I mean? Like what God can do is freaking enormous. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see what happens with this book and what the goal of it is, because it may be as simple as I never know how many people it's impacted, and that's fine too, because I'm moving on to the next project now. I always do.
Yeah, you can't just sit and wait, but that book, there may be someone 10 years from now that picks up your book and it helps them. It'll outlive you for sure, this book, right?
Right. Yeah. Isn't that cool?
That's the beauty of it. I think about that this podcast too. I thought, someday I'm going to be gone, clearly, right? We're all not here forever. But somewhat, my voice might still be out there, right? Like
you're changing lives.
To everyone, it can continue. So I think that's really cool. So you guys at home, like, think of something like that for yourself for healing that you can do. And like you said, it could be art that you never sell. It could be like, who knows? Write a book. You don't even have to publish it. You can just write it for yourself. Just to heal. Just to heal. Yeah. Leave for future generations or whatever. Yeah, no, I love it. I think that's awesome. Well, Hilary, this has been very enlightening. And if you're listening and you're in one of those low spots, you can do the same thing. None of it's special. You can do the same thing. Connected to the divine, get on your spiritual path, make it happen. It's fine.
Yeah. Read, trust, and Gus. If I can get through my life, you can get through yours. I promise.
Yes, you guys read this book and you're going to be like, okay, I think we all got this.
I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. I feel like I've made a new friend. I've so enjoyed this conversation.
Funny in your book too. I love a book that's serious and funny at the same time. And that's not an easy thing to write. Being very serious things and traumas, but bringing not too much light to it, but enough light to it, right? Enough lightheartedness.
That which doesn't kill us gives us a dark sense of humor.
Yes. And I find that I'll leave it with this. I find that the funniest people with the best sense of humor and personalities have been through a lot of shit. Hands down. All the people who are like not funny, kind of boring, just want small talk, have not been through the shit yet.
That's right. Haven't had their turn.
Yes. The most interesting person in the room has some stories to tell. Yeah, for sure. And those are my people. Those are my people.
Those are my people too. I would love to talk to you outside of this venue sometime, because you're just a joy, Jen. Thank you so much.
We have to figure it out. Thanks for being on the show. This has been fun.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, I know your time is valuable. And right now, I'm feeling super grateful and totally humbled that you chose to hang out with me today. If this podcast resonates with you, could you do me a solid and hit that subscribe or follow button? That's going to help you out because you're never going to miss an episode. And it helps me out because you're never going to miss an episode. And if you have like 30 seconds more, could you leave a 5-star rating and maybe leave a kick-ass review? Thank you so much, and I can't wait to continue our journey on the next episode. Oh, and I can't forget the fine print. You know, the legal jargon. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We're just two friends on this journey together, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or any other qualified professional. You get it. See you next time.